whatever, however you choose to interact with a good community of people who care about this world. And I don't kid myself that net neutrality is going to be the top of your issues. But I want to speak to you today to convince you why it is among the critical issues. If you think about how much of the organizing that you're involved in is mediated by the web, that alone is a damn good reason for you to be here. Net neutrality is not a phrase that rolls off the tongue readily. Neutral. Who's going to get up and jump up and down about neutrality? It sounds like a weird thing to be excited about. But why it's important and why it's worth your attention in this very, very busy world is why we're here. My name is Rick Spisak. I've got involved in the internet while it was still a text-based experience in the early 70s. I was turned on to the internet by an author named Ted Nelson, who was critical in inventing the Windows interface, the mouse interface, and something called hypermedia. He ultimately said, imagine if all human knowledge was available at a click. He looked at the world of footnotes, which we all are familiar with. Those of us who are here are all extremely literate, not to mention by our society standards. But he said, what if, as you're moving across somebody's passage, these ideas, why Abe Lincoln chose to say what he said, why John Kennedy chose to say what he said, why Martin Luther chose those words. So he came up with this idea of hyperlinks. And the internet, as you know, is a world of information, of pictures, of interactive experiences, available with a click, and Ted Nelson was the guy who said that. He imagined a world, I want you to think about this, in the 50s and 60s, he imagined a world where not just corporations and armies and generals had access to computers. What he said, what if artists had access to computers? And that's what turned me on. I was a light show artist in those days, in the late 60s and early 70s, and I got turned on to the web. I actually was involved with the web when the subject of, let's see here, if I can do this. Okay. When the idea came up of, in this world of text-only internet, what if we could have pictures and movies and audio and animation? And how could we do that? How could that get funded? Well, the subject came up, well, if businesses got on the web, if .com was existing, they would invest in the web. With that would come graphics and animation. But we knew there'd be a penalty to pay. And with that penalty, my friends, with that ability to have video and audio and graphics, what else would happen would be eventually there'd be a two-tiered internet. So we knew there'd be a price to pay, and the price would eventually be limitations and restrictions, and that's why we're here. Because this is the day when they're doing that. This is when net neutrality, which means that all information on the web has been treated equally. Whether you're going to a fashion show, whether you're going to the halls of Congress via a click, all the information is delivered simultaneously, all delivered at the same speed. Whether you're going to a mom and pop store on the corner who has to have a website, or you're going to a big box store, you're going to Amazon, the clicks delivered at the same rate. Well, what's going to happen as they commercialize the web fully? You may have heard of the two-tiered web. What it essentially amounts to is that for the big box people, for the big box entity, the large corporation, they'll be delivered at a high rate of speed because they're going to subsidize the ISPs. They're going to subsidize so that the content that you're getting is delivered at a high rate of speed. So I broke down the impact of net neutrality to 8 points. Number one, commerce and competition. So right now, if you're a small business and you have a website, that's fantastic. A click going to you will be delivered at the same rate a click going to Amazon. But with the end of net neutrality, and Amazon underwrites Comcast or Verizon or Bell South or whoever you're getting your internet ISP delivered, If they start subsidizing that, because they're going to do that, to make sure that their content gets prioritized, that's whose content you're going to get. Your small business on the web is going to be buried. You'll be on the internet dirt roads. Competition will be eliminated because the people with the big bucks, the people with the money, are going to own the road. And anybody else, any other content. So I want you to imagine you're working with a small political group or a small human rights group or a small women's rights group, for example. You're not going to be able to compete for web clicks. You are not going to be visible even on this new web. Identity control and tracking, the second leg of this 8 spokes. Well, you've all heard the stories, Equifax, Facebook, and on and on and on. Your data is being sold, your data is being stolen, your data, your ID information, every click that you make, every search that you've done, every website you visit is not only resold, it's commodified, and you have a data list of all the likes and all the searches. Now, some of this is avoidable to an extent. I would urge you to look at ixquick.com as an alternative search engine, DuckDuckGo as alternative search engines, because these are search engines that do not record your searches. So the standard, it's even become its own verb, Google, who records all of your traffic, records all of your email, who records all of your searches and commodifies them. In other words, you have a data profile through the thanks to Google that they resell. Now, the mere fact that they're reselling it may be a lesser concern, but the important thing is, and you may have heard recently about Facebook has psychological profiles, and they are not above, and they have already admitted to doing psychological testing, providing certain populations with sad news, certain populations with happy news, and testing your emotions, adjusting your emotional tenor through the content that they feed you. So net neutrality has been a wall against that. Data collection and privacy. Well, we know about the data collection, and privacy, as we know, is disappearing. But with the end of net neutrality, with the end of regulation of the internet, there will be no bar to what corporations can do with your information and the profiles. Many of you have noticed that when you search for Google, then you go to your Gmail account, the searches that you search for show up in ads that are appearing in your mail. Okay? Amplify that 100-fold. So that your searches, the content that you've searched for, what you're interested in, that's going to become a silo of what's available to you without net neutrality. Access to the human library. To me, one of the absolute glories of civilization today is that we can go and tour a museum in Prague. You can go look at a newspaper from Sydney, Australia. You can go visit Washington, D.C. with a couple clicks of your mouse. That's amazing. Okay, now, as this becomes increasingly commercialized, your web experience, you'll be directed to what museums you can see, which ones are on the must-see list, and which ones are not. I can only urge you to imagine what that might be like. Okay, citizen participation, free from coercion and tracking. Okay, they're tracking you, they're building a database profile of you, they know your likes and dislikes, they know where you live, they know who you like, they know what you watch, they know who you've liked on the web or Facebook or whatever search engine you've used. But you're going to be deluged with political content that has been psychologically adapted to speak directly to you. So this coercion, so as you vote online, as you organize online, so many of us respond to organizations via our online life, okay? Many of you go to rallies because of what you heard online. You may already know that the, quote, Russian bots were creating events that they were publicizing online that didn't exist except because the political agenda for the people controlling those online ads, it was driven that way. So the commodification of citizenship to me is a really, I won't say scary because we are patriots of data. We, the literate, we, the citizen literate, are the ones who are going to fight back. Small business protection and the big boxification. Okay, imagine you're down the street with your little sports store from the big guy down the way, whose advertising is monstrous on the web, who's paying not only for ads, they're paying to subsidize your internet connection speed. They're paying Comcast a tad every time you go to them. They're paying Verizon. They're paying AT&T. So by them underwriting the delivery of their content, their data is going to be preferred. The other guys, and if you think about how many people you know that are in the web business, how many small businesses have a web presence, where is that business going to go? It's going to disappear. The web designer, the graphic designer, the web promoter, that stuff is going to disappear, and only the biggest companies who are underwriting delivery are going to be visible on the web. Everybody else is going to be on what I call the internet dirt road, the internet back road, the rutted donkey path of content. Okay? Freedom of speech, political, artistic, cultural, and commercial. Freedom of speech, my friends, is what drives you and me to the web more often than not. To get our ideas out, to share our thoughts with like-minded people, and even sometimes with non-like-minded people. But when you're tracked, when your citizenship is reckoned against your database record of all the organizations you've liked, your citizenship experience is going to be mediated by those people that control the internet. We can't afford that. If you're concerned when the gentleman who lives at 1600 from time to time in between golf games, when he says attack the press in his rallies, when he said go get that guy, I'll pay for your bills when you're arrested, my friends, these people aren't interested in the free exchange of ideas. They're interested in the free exchange of their ideas. And I suspect that there's some free thinkers out here. And you and I, free thinkers, we are not so welcome in their controlled internet. So I wanted to share these ideas with you, and so that you know, this is not a long presentation. We're going to do this in 12 minutes, because I want to leave time for you to ask questions as well. Okay? Freedom from thought control and throttling. Throttling is a really ugly word. It's so ugly that throttling really doesn't cover it. But what it amounts to is this. Let's say that you wanted to see the new Oliver Stone movie. You know what? You're going to have more trouble seeing the Oliver Stone movie than you will the next right-wing war propaganda. That you'll get high speed. No problem there. The next fashion show, high-speed content. No problem. That anti-war thing you wanted to see, that the Blood on the Mountain documentary about West Virginia miners and what's been done to them and their neighborhoods, that's going to be hard to get. Because that's not subsidized. Google content, that'll be subsidized. Microsoft's content, that'll be subsidized. But not independent thought. Okay, competition and competition. I want to focus step by step on each of these steps, each of these stages. Now I'm going to ask you to hold your questions till the end. There'll be plenty of time for questions, okay? Commerce and competition. Without constraints, without regulation. You know, our good friends on the right are always complaining, oh my God, you know, regulation, it's crushing business. Oh my God, regulation's terrible. They obviously aren't thinking about the regulation that keeps their food safe. They're not thinking about the regulation that makes the medicine that they're taking actually medicine, rather than just white powder. But without constraints on the web, how can competition flourish? What price do we pay for throttling? Only the mainstream ideas will be seen. Independent thought, those new ideas, there'll be no room for that. They'll be delivered on internet donkey cart, not on that high-speed feed. The price that we're going to pay for throttling is immense. And if proprietary throttling is allowed, how can ideas compete? They won't. They'll be invisible. And you know and I know that innovation doesn't come from large corporations typically. It comes from independent thinkers. That's where that stuff comes from. Identity, control, and tracking. Okay, This is almost too easy to talk about because you know and I know how many times you've heard just recently of serious, significant organizations and entities, both governmental and corporate, who've lost control of the information. Who said, oh, well, you know, Equifax, all your stuff is gone. Sorry. Who knows what thief got it? With no constraints on reselling consumer information, you will only see the ads that cater to what you've searched. And you won't see the new ideas. You won't hear about the new information. You won't hear that crank who said, you know, there's a better way to do this. That information is not going to be visible. It's not going to be heard. It's not going to be seen. Innovation will be something that Grandma and Grandpa talk about. Every click commercialized, every choice tracked and quantified. The data profile that they already have on us is bad enough. But let me ask you this. How many of you, I don't see hands, how many of you have looked at your credit report? How many of you have seen it accurate? Probably no one. There's all kinds of errors, and the bigger the database, the greater the error. So this information they're collecting on us is fraught with errors. Every action, every click, tracked, and reported. We've already seen the increasing criminalization of things like collecting rainwater. You've seen them, I've seen them. As they start clicking and recording this and giving you a data profile, you're going to be criminalized by what you thought and written on the web, unless we can regain net neutrality. Data collection and privacy. The data trail of every user will be tracked and reported, every transaction listed and categorized. You know, this used to be the realm of what they used to call the tinfoil hat people. Oh yeah, they want to get rid of your money so they can track every expenditure. Well, guess what? That's not far-fetched anymore. That's not a surprise anymore. I can tell you in the early 80s, back when AOL was king of what most people experienced as the web, we had a young daughter, a 12 or 13-year-old, who was chatting online with AOL with a friend of hers about issues related to their middle school. The police showed up at my door and said, your daughter's talking about things online. Back then. What do you think they know now? With every transaction listed and categorized, marketing efficiency will reshape and commodify every click. Privacy evaporates in a trail of ones and zeros. Citizenship will be reduced to a data set of transactions. Citizenship can deteriorate, I'm afraid, to mandatory transactions. And with no net neutrality, with no constraints, no limitations on this, where are they going? You and I can guess. Only commercially significant data will be available. Any out-of-step, unpopular perspective is going to disappear. Commercially significant singers, writers, actors will be seen. Only a narrow range of human knowledge will be available via high-speed, easy access. The writings of the obscure, the out of favor, will be invisible. Artists will disappear in the aisles of commodification. You and I already know, from what we've seen, where has music gone? Where has acting gone? Where have movies gone? Big box, big explosions, no narrative. It's going to get worse unless we stand up and oppose this commodification. Citizen participation. Every transaction monitored and quantified. Interactions with the county, the state, and the country will be tracked and quantified and reported. Citizenship will be receiving tailored propaganda fitted to their likes and dislikes. This we've already seen. This they've already admitted to. Each citizen receiving tailored propaganda fitted to their likes and dislikes. Idiosyncratic behavior will be tracked, and pressure to conform will be mandatory. You've probably heard that Facebook has admitted, they've already admitted that they've done psychological experiments providing certain content to different populations to bring out their emotions, to make them sad, to make them happy. That's not going to go away. That's only going to be amplified. The big boxification. Small businesses won't be able to afford to utilize high-speed delivery like the big box stores because they're going to underwrite it. Small businesses will be reduced and disappear, and there'll be only the big boys. The corner store will no longer exist. The big box will be all Amazoning every town and every employment opportunity. Freedom of speech. The political, artistic, cultural, and commercial life, only the speech that supports the prime paradigm will be published. Everything else tracked, recorded, and reported. Aberrations will be detailed, and outlawed groupthink will be published and rewarded. Protection from throttling. Okay, throttling, this idea that some content will come fast, any unpreferred content will come slow, and it won't matter what, quote, speed you have on your box. It won't matter whether you're paying for the $30 a month, 10 megabit per second, or the 100 megabit per second, because it's the content that comes to the pipeline that's the throttling is going to occur. So right now, you can choose any gas station, but oddly enough, all the prices are the same. What a coincidence! Isn't that amazing? Did they all get the memo? Well, imagine that same kind of control ubiquitous. When the small stores, when the main street is completely absorbed in the Walmarts, in the Amazons, where are you going to go for competitive prices? Nowhere. When Google subsidizes high-speed content, why would you use Yahoo, Bing, or Quick? If you're a bookseller, but Amazon's giving away free ebooks, what are you going to do? So the 8 spokes of net neutrality: commerce and competition, identity control and tracking, data collection and privacy, access to that human library, the whole human library, citizen participation free from coercion and tracking, small business protection, freedom of speech, and protection from thought control. This is net neutrality. And if we lose it, we're losing a lot. It's not just about how fast you can download the latest Bruce Willis movie. It's about the rest of that whole internet experience. So there's a couple other ideas I want to throw at you, but this is it. This is net neutrality. What can you do? Okay, there are organizations, there are people in government who are opposing this. Ron Wyden is one of them. Elizabeth Warden is another one. And I have a handout back there. And if you want the whole presentation, just send me an email. I'd be glad to send you the whole presentation. There are, I think, 15 links to important agencies and organizations who are fighting to protect net neutrality. Yes, it's true the FCC gave up the ghost and said, hey, no, it's a free day for the corporations, no problem. But Congress still has to sign on. And granted, I know we have a Republican Congress. But there are still people who oppose it, there are still people who are fighting for it, and I understand even if it's lost in Congress, we're still going to go to the courts. This is important, not just for you, not just for your kids, not just for your grandkids. This is redefining civilization as a data, processed, controlled, throttled experience. We can't afford to let that happen to our civilization. There's a couple other points I want to make, but we'll just go through these quickly. Back in the early days, there was only EDU, GOV, org, and MIL. Web was slow, web was text only. And we saw that if we let corporations come on with their advertising, yeah, we'd get video, yeah, we'd get great graphics. We didn't have graphics on the web until the late 80s. But we knew there'd be a price, that eventually the web would become at least two-tiered. But we still, even then, although we anticipated a lot, we didn't understand just how ubiquitous, how controlling this was going to be, how pervasive. So with commerce, we'd have the investment that we'd get the new media. With commercials, there'd be pressure. The web could become, and this is where we're at, could become a commerce-only platform. And the only content permitted would be successful commercial content. What about the independent, the non-commercial web? I mean, how many of you have attended events just this month alone because of what you learned on the web, what you learned on Facebook, what you got in an email? Well, that experience is going to change. Okay, the slowdown is near. our egalitarian electronic town square. You know, somebody said the other day, you know, geez, I don't know why Facebook is so political. And I said, my friend, I want you to think about it for this way. You know, in Hyde Park in London, you could go and make a speech. You could rail against the things as they are. We don't have a town square anymore in most of America. We don't. We have an electronic town square. That's the place where you go to tell people we're having a meeting, we're doing a rally, we're getting together to talk about something, we're organizing to support a candidate. It is our electronic town square. And if they change it, if they rewrite the rules on how we access, how we can get information off the electronic town square, our civilization's in major danger. You know that, and so do I. Now, is it true that there's a lot of dangers? Yes, it is. Is it true that our current regime is much more interested in corporations? That's true. But this is a battle we can't afford to walk away from. The on-commerce web, what it ultimately produces in an information ecology where any idea outside the arena sanctioned already won't exist. The internet and computer itself is in fact a direct result of civic and commercial investment. Access to the internet is critical for today's civilization, for our schools, for our recreation, for the media surroundings, as well as our military. If they cannibalize digital commons and hand them off to narrow commercial interests, it's a threat to our civilization. The loss of net neutrality will have a profound impact on education. It'll limit educational resources, and will result, as we well know, in a less informed population. So what's net neutrality? The idea, the principle, the requirement that internet service must treat all internet data the same, regardless of its kind, its source, or its destination. So when someone asks you, what the hell is net neutrality? Well, it's that all information should be treated equally. None sped up, none throttled. My friends, I'm glad you joined us. I will be glad to entertain any questions. Oh wait, but first I want to talk about one other thing. We've been talking about information and access to information. There is a flip side, and I want you to think about it just for a second. The right to be forgotten. A very important issue that is as important as the free flow of information. What's the right to be forgotten? Okay, let's say you were accused of something, it was all over the papers, you were found innocent. That information won't get the play. There was a famous lawsuit where a young woman was killed in a car accident. She died terribly. And unfortunately, people in the first responders community publicized her photographs. Her pictures of her dead body were published all over the web. Family said they need to be removed. There is no easy way to do that. In fact, the information industry really opposes the idea broadly. In Europe, it's been fought successfully. A gentleman who was charged with things and then won the suit. Again, the second part of that never got publicized. The fact that this trail of an allegation pursued him for decades. So he fought, and in Europe, you have the right to be forgotten. There's an elaborate procedure. Some of you may have even said, I want to turn off my Facebook account. It's very difficult. It can be done. But the right to be forgotten is as important as the right to get access to information. So that's another part of the battle. And you know, when I talk to people and say, hey, you know, I'm going to talk about net neutrality, they go, wow, what the heck is that? Not only is it complicated, my friends, you see the many threads of this, how pervasive it is in what we call civilization today. It's not, it doesn't fit on a bumper sticker. And yet, it's still very, very, very important. So thank you so much for joining me. I will entertain any questions. Any questions from you? No.